So it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6 Lite and see how this particular tablet holds up in 2024. Now, this tablet, I will tell you, in a lot of its own ways, was a very interesting tablet to say the least. It was, I would say, a good tablet in its own right. I think there was a couple of different generations of this particular tablet, but the funniest thing is that for the most part, this particular tablet came in 3 different generations, and the latest one just came out right now. But somewhat of the problem I would have with the Tab S6 Lite is its naming. I never really understood it. I don't know why they called it the S6 Lite. I think they should have changed it to a little bit here and there, maybe like having keeping it up with a standard Tab series like Tab S9 Lite, maybe something like that. But regardless, this is still a very good selling tablet. A lot of people have bought this thing when it first came out, and because they're continuing to make revisions of it, there's probably a humongous group of people who are still buying this type of tablet. And considering it's pretty much the cheapest or one of the cheapest tablets you can buy when you walk inside of like a Best Buy or the Samsung store or whatever, I still think there's probably a lot of people who are still looking for this type of tablet at the end of the day. So if you want to pick up some tablets that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6 Lite, you can see that on the front, we have a 10.4-inch TFT LCD panel on it. And to be honest, it really isn't that bad of a panel. Like, I still think it's actually a very decent panel for how, cheap this particular tablet is. There's just a few things to keep in mind. One, it is a TFT LCD panel, so it's definitely not that great. It's definitely, I would say it's not even as good as maybe a standard LCD panel that you'd get like on an IPS, LCD panel, but TFT is great. It's one of the cheapest panels you could probably buy. On top of that, it's not a terrible panel. I think it looks pretty good. Like, it looks like a good tablet, at least when the screen's off. You can see that it has pretty thin bezels on it. It doesn't really have that much, it doesn't have that much to look outdated on because it is fairly minimalistic. So that right there is kind of a cool advantage going on for that particular tablet. But otherwise, it's more or less what you'd expect, for a tablet nowadays. On the sides, it's kind of like a curved side to it. So it's not super flat like maybe like the standard Tab series that you have in the more premium ones, but still, this one's still fairly good for the most part. The other thing to keep in mind here, though, is that with this type of tablet, you are getting an S Pen support or stylus support, which is actually very cool. It's super nice having that type of capability, and I'm actually a humongous fan of that. So anytime you can get as stylus support in these type of tablets, especially when it's kind of like a tablet like this that's so cheap, it is very nice to have that type of capability there. And once again, I'm a very big fan of that type of stuff. On the bottom, you are getting USB Type-C, and you are also getting a microSD card slot on this particular tablet too. So this in and of itself is another really cool feature. Once again, having microSD card slot is super cool, and I love having that type of capability just right out the gate, so you can just go ahead and essentially just expand the storage if you need to. That's another really big advantage for this type of tablet too. So that kind of covers it up on the sides and on the front. On the back side of this particular tablet, you are essentially getting a single camera setup, and that's kind of it. It's pretty much like a pretty basic type of styling on the outside. It definitely doesn't feel as premium as the standard Tab series that we're getting, but it's good enough for what you'd expect. I do think if you're going to go ahead and just grab some sort of a tablet, this thing, for its price is actually not terrible. And I do think the build quality of this thing is probably one of the more surprising things going on for this particular tablet at the end of the day. So from that particular perspective, that kind of covers it up there for the most part. Now, in terms of the camera, this camera is not really going to be breaking any records or anything like that. It's a pretty standard camera when I was testing it. It's an 8 megapixel wide angle lens, then a 5 megapixel wide angle lens on the front. Now again, this is that 2022 model that I have. There's other models, there's a 2020 model, and now there's a latest 2024 model. So keep that in mind. All of them have their own kind of, things, but with this particular model, the camera is fairly outdated kind of when it comes down to it. I kind of look at a camera, and if it basically gives you 4K capability, that's one of the biggest assets and one of the biggest reasons to go and buy one of those types of tablets. I do think with this particular tab, there really isn't that big of a reason to go and pick it up from that particular perspective. It's a fairly outdated camera in almost every single way, and that right there is a very, very big problem personally for me. If I'm going to go through and buy some sort of tablet like this, I definitely don't want it to have this type of capability. I want it to have, a much better type of camera. But on the flip side, if you already have a really good phone in your pocket, if you're already using a pretty good phone that has a lot of capability or is fairly powerful, you can pretty much go through and, you can still get fairly good capability from this type of tablet, which is something I like a lot. You know, if you have a phone that's already pretty good, then you don't really need a camera on your tablet anyways. But like I said, I mean, this thing's not really that great, and it's just not going to be able to hang up even well against like a Samsung Galaxy S8 at the end of the day. So in terms of the camera side, that kind of covers it up there. Now from the software side, this is also another somewhat interesting thing. So with their Tab S6 Lites, they basically have, their, standard Android tablets. So you can go ahead and install One UI on it, which it already has. Apparently it's upgradable. It's upgraded to, One UI 6, which is very good. So that's Android 14. But once again, keep in mind, I mean, that's going to be, a limited version of One UI. It's not going to be that great. It's definitely going to have its own issues, and, it's going to be kind of unstable. But as of right now, you are getting that version of software, which I think is a very, very cool thing. So if I'm going through and if I'm getting any sort of device, I like having this type of capability that essentially is giving you like a pretty decent performing, software. It's still supported for the most part. At least it's getting security updates. So that right there is probably going to be a very interesting thing to kind of keep in mind at the end of the day. But the thing I'll tell you though is I don't know how much longer this particular device is going to be supported. I have a hard time believing this thing's going to be lasting like another 3 years. So probably it's almost at the end of its life as of right now. And you have to remember, this is the Tab S6 Lite. This is not the Tab S9. This is going to be a, somewhat of an older device when it comes down to it. And I don't want you to just go ahead and buy a tablet if it's already going to be outdated. That is a possibility when you're getting this tablet. So once again, just kind of keep that in mind with this particular device. Now, on top of that, this particular tablet is also giving you, a decent, interesting performing tablet inside of it. Depending on which model you get, you can either get the Snapdragon 720G chipset or the Snapdragon 732G chipset. You're also getting 4 gigabytes of RAM on this particular tablet as well. And the thing I'll tell you, I mean, number one, it really isn't like a terrible performing tablet, for the price that you're paying. And I do think that's an interesting thing that Samsung's kind of done here. On some other devices, they did throw in like an Exynos chipset. With this one, they did end up throwing in the standard Snapdragon chipsets on these ones, which I actually do think is actually pretty cool. So I do think this in and of itself is a very, very cool thing. Like if you're just trying to go and get a tablet that's going to be able to handle, most things you throw at it, this is going to be a pretty decent option when it comes down to it. And I do think this in and of itself is a very, very cool thing. But keep in mind, if you're trying to go ahead and use some sort of tablet that has a lot of capability or has a lot of power, this one's probably not the one for you. Then you probably want to buy something like a Tab S7 in the used market. That's, gone down in the used market quite a bit as well. So that also is another option that you have right there. But I do think like if you're going through and using an everyday tablet, depending on what you're trying to do, I mean, this thing could probably get the job done. But that's kind of how I feel about this whole entire Galaxy Tab S6 Lite in 2024. Like, I really do feel like this particular device could end up doing a little bit of a better job in a majority of ways. But that's not really what this tablet's going for. Like, it's going for a cheap budget tablet that you can just go ahead and buy, and that they can make and mass produce, and they can just kind of get rid of them as they make them. Beyond that, I don't think many people are trying to go and buy this tablet when it comes down to it to replace their Tab S9. This is supposed to be an entry-level tablet, and I do think they did a decent job with it. They definitely cut corners here and there, and you might be able to tell that throughout, your use of this tablet, like with the display. But as long as you're not comparing this thing side by side against really any other tab, I think you should be okay for the most part. And but I will tell you, before you buy this thing, look at some prices of some used Tab S7s, Tab S8s. Those ones will probably give you better value per dollar than this particular tablet, in my opinion. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.